Good morning and welcome to Real Estate Economics webinar series. I'm John Mulville, Vice President of Consulting here at Real Estate Economics, and I'll be leading today's presentation about California's active adult market. Today we'll be looking at what are the current mature market housing conditions in California, how about the demographics, what's the competitive environment, what is keeping mature households in their current homes, what will motivate mature households to relocate, and what are the new home opportunities for active adult builders and investors in the next cycle. For those of you who are familiar with our residential economic report and our consulting practice, you've probably seen some of our demographic data. What we'd really like to examine here today is look at the growth in the 2016 numbers for 55 to 64 and on up. We've got general growth in the state of California, largely because there's tremendous internal growth, people just having normal childbearing years and kids coming into the population. So naturally we pick up really across all age categories, but what we've really got is baby boomers, post-boomers, and this sort of demographic terms growing in tremendous numbers in the next 5 to 20 years, and that really affects the 55 on up age groups. If you look at the percentages, those numbers are going to go from 6 to 8% for 65 to 74, even bigger in the 55 to 64. What happens in these categories is people have a tendency to move much less frequently in their older ages. By the time you're 75 on up, you tend to stay in one place, or if you're leaving a conventional house, it's off to an assisted living or some other type of care facility. So the time to really target buyers of mature market home products is in the 45 to 54 and 55 to 64 age categories. And as you can see, these numbers are growing tremendously. This is not just a state of California phenomenon, but it's also widespread across the nation, across the U.S., across Western Europe, and in developed economies of Asia, particularly Japan. If you look at the 5-year changes by age category, we've got quite a few kids. The middle ages, 15 to 24, all the way up to 45 to 54, are relatively stable through 2016, but where the data really jumps off the page is in that 55 to 64 and 65 to 74 age groups. If you look at those total numbers, just internally to the state of California, about 600,000 in the 65 to 74 and almost 700,000 in the 55 to 64. Many of these people obviously are already living in California, but they may be in two-story homes. They may be in neighborhoods that are transitioning away from the condition when they purchased there. Many of these homes aren't really suitable for mature market buyers, and we'll talk to all those points today. So, as I mentioned, there's a widespread conception that a lot of Californians are leaving. They're abandoning the state so far, going in all different directions, and there's numbers to support that. We've got out-migration, there's no doubt about it, but internal growth amongst people of childbearing years and young families has tended to more than offset that. California still has population growth of roughly about 200 to 300,000 annually. In a good year, the state might pick up 1/3 with 3-year growth rates, usually approaching about 1 million. Now, in the last few years, we've had some out-migration. You can see where are Californians going? The most common place and the most common state that people are leaving is obviously California. And where are they going? Texas, Arizona, state of Washington, and Nevada. Now, some of these are economically motivated. Obviously, Texas has low unemployment and has had a tremendous job growth in the last 3 or 4 years. Arizona is a right-to-work state, so once the overhang of the real estate market starts to take place there, which it already is, employment will be growing there. Washington's actually held its own relative to the region and the rest of the country in terms of employment. Nevada, of course, is the single highest unemployment state in the nation, followed only by California. So people aren't typically moving there for employment reasons, but they also have no income tax. What we'll find is our mature buyer will be very conscious about cost of living, which states have different taxes, which states have different utility rates, and so on, looking for lower cost of living locations in many cases. So why are new home sales in active communities still slow? We'll show you a couple of tables on this in a moment, but let's talk to the main points. Mature market buyers tend to be highly discretionary. They will want to look at a product again and again and again, check each floor plan, go through the news. They tend to be sensitive to bad headlines, bad economic news, things like the European crisis, a banking crisis, budget crisis, crisis du jour, if you will. Just because if you don't have a steady stream of income coming in and you're living off your investments or your interest, you're much more prone to shock in some of these events. So people are sensitive to this. Household debt levels are also high amongst mature Americans, not necessarily relative to other age groups, but relative to the past. In the past 20 or 30 years, the number of people over 60 who still have mortgages on their home has essentially doubled from about 20% of all households to about 40% of all households. There's more households that have been helping their children or paying for college, taking back a boomerang kid, this sort of thing. So mature households have higher debt levels than they have traditionally. People in this age group also did poorly in the last recession and the last stock market decline. A lot of these people were encouraged to take more risk, to earn more interest, to move into riskier investments to try to up their income. They were living off home equity credit lines and that sort of thing. That didn't turn out well. So now they're hesitant to repeat those same mistakes and sell their homes at what they perceive to be very low values. As much as anything, I think one of the big problems is there's relatively little appealing active adult product on the market. What we'll show today is that most active adult communities are high amenity, large-scale communities that tend to be on the fringes. That's sort of a one-size-fits-all approach to the market, because we think there's high end of the market, a medium end of the market, a low end of the market, and all these mature households are going to have different interests, different willingness to spend, and have a different approach to their living environment. Today's mature market buyer often is forced to stay in the workforce, and some of these outlying areas don't have many employment opportunities. Some of these areas have high ownership costs, that sort of thing. So we think the current mature market product is a little bit out of sync with what we believe people want and would buy if it was available. So let's look at the mature market data for the state of California going all the way back to 2005. Now, if you recall, 2005, 2006, even 2007 and into 2008, those years were relatively healthy economically. It was easy to get a loan. Prices were generally good. Competition was increasing in those years, so we didn't really have much outright price appreciation in the mature market. Mature market builders were willing to take large positions in outlying areas to maintain affordability, so we didn't see huge home price appreciation like we did in the primary market. Now, since 2009, we've seen essentially steady value ratios. You can see 176, 172. Only in the last couple of years have we even lost $1 off the value ratios. But at that same time, the prices have been coming down a little bit. We've seen mature market builders streamline their designs, take what they could out of the intricacy of the homes, offer easier to build, easier to frame, different amenity packages to try to maintain that affordability and drive the price points down. But overall, general price range stability. Concessions have been up a bit, but now let's look at repeat survey sales volume. You can see in our repeated surveys of this, again going back to 2005, the entire state has really only runs 100, 200, 150, maybe 200, 250s a peak in the fourth quarter of 2007 in terms of total monthly sales. Now, this is a fourth quarter survey. Remember, there's tremendous seasonality in home sales across the nation. So these are sort of annual lows occur in the fourth quarter, but the numbers, are lower here than they would be in any other quarter. The real point is that we've seen, a little bit of slowdown, steady sequential slowdown in total sales and sales per community over the last 4 or 5 years. At present, there's about only 48 active mature market communities across the state. So the competitive levels are not that high. They tend not to be that concentrated, and they're almost always so far in outlying locations. Manteca, if you will, Beaumont, Indio, these areas tend to host most of the mature market product, with very few homes in suburban areas and still fewer homes in core areas close to employment. Now, one of the things that I think we can really draw out of this is the mega community, that huge community where a builder goes out and takes down 2,000 lots, puts in a golf course, a bunch of pools, and builds a sequence of different designs around it over a 10 or 15 year period. That's really prevented the market in this particular situation from adapting. Consumers are wanting different things. They're wanting to be closer to family, closer to work, staying in the workforce longer. Those communities can only address market changes by changing designs, by changing price points. The locations are fixed, cost of ownership are fixed. So this sort of mature market model that the builders adopted 10 years ago hasn't really served that well in the current disruption. Let's look at the inventory trends, and I think this bears out the same point. The blue figures are months worth of inventory, and you look at this and you think 45 months of inventory, 50 months of inventory, what a train wreck. That means we won't be able to build mature market product for 4.5 or 5 years. I'd say exactly the opposite is true. These high inventories are concentrated in units that aren't released. They're still dirt. They're sitting in these often remote locations, waiting to be, needed as part of current offerings amongst these giant master plan communities of mature product. It's going to take years. It will take years to absorb this, but where the market opportunities are much closer in terms of location, in smaller developments, in developments that are targeted to the different buyer profiles that we know exist in mature market products. These giant master plans, that are in a couple places across the state, they may just have to slog it out for the next 5 or 6 years, because there is opportunities for more flexible competitors to enter the market. So what motivates a mature household to move? Now, some of these concepts aren't very pretty, so we're going to talk through them just a little bit. What we've seen is the household has needed monthly income. If they're living off pensions, typically small, they're living off interest rates are very low, they had a tough time with their stock market portfolio, there are many mature households that are asset rich, but at the same time income poor. One of the most straightforward ways to generate some income is to sell your home. And you think, oh, why would people do that? But what we've seen in some of these market areas where the market action and the psychology is a little bit ahead of other areas is people will sell their home, which has no debt on it, take that money out, turn around and put 5 or 10% down on a different home or a new home, and keep the rest in the bank. Now they've really solved their monthly income problems. They have a new home. They've often got energy efficient items. They've switched to a single-story home. They've got a gated environment. They've got lower energy costs, and they've got money coming in. It's not really, an appealing thought that they're forced into this, that there's a necessity to do this, to leave their homes. But there's places across the state where people have really decided, my home's obviously not coming back to 2006 levels. That subprime thing was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It may be years, more years than I have to get back to those values. So I might as well go ahead and sell this and try to create some income for myself now. The bargain I get on my new house will offset what I lose on my current house, and I can leverage this move by going from a high cost of living area to a low cost of living area, picking up energy efficiency, picking up a more modern home, contemporary features, and sometimes taking your Prop 90 cost basis from market to market and thereby really leverage a move, not just make a straight move, but have the ability to turn it into more money than just a simple equation of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. One of the things that's really come out of the survey data is about 80% of mature buyers looking around are considering the cost of living in the markets that they're evaluating. And this has become more profound, as we've had so many problems with state budgets. People are really questioning the ability of their state to provide these services. Obviously, they're not going to be able to forever. California's cut back on many, many services. If you've been following the whole Greek meltdown thing, they're talking about severe pension cuts, this sort of thing. This is a real question for older Americans on a limited income. We've got to go to a place that has steady fiscal situation, steady budgets, and has the ability to maintain services. And last, really as important as anything, is the current house doesn't fit. If you've been in a house, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years, many of those neighborhoods have changed, and I'm not necessarily saying change to, a crime-prone area or someplace nobody would want to live. It's just the reasons that you moved there in the first place. Schools, neighbors, and different features and amenities don't appeal to you anymore, or they're simply not there anymore, so the location has changed. The sizes are wrong. You've got bedrooms you don't need. You've got two-story. You've got steps. You've got, different things that just don't fit. And so overall, the garage is too big, storage isn't right, overall the design doesn't quite right. So many people are interested in moving on design factors. So we were talking earlier about income. What is the capacity of a mature household to create this income? If we've said that many, and certainly not all, but if many of the mature households are asset rich and income poor, is there really a capacity to generate this income? So I've borrowed this table from SBI Macro Monitor, and it shows for the different demographic categories we like to put people in: Generation X, Y, Young Boomers, Old Boomers, Silent Generation, Greatest Generation. What percent of households own a home, shown in the light blue, has a mortgage or owes money on the home in the burgundy, and has no real estate debt in the darker blue at the right side of these tables? Now, this is 2008, 2009, so we know the percentage of households owning a home, that's come down. But we would think that those who owe on a home, if you don't have that home anymore, you probably don't owe on it in this environment. And so that number's come down too, and has no debt. We haven't really seen people, attacking their real estate debt. Overall consumer debt is coming down, but the only true measure on real estate debt is we're losing mortgages, not pay downs. So there is still a lot of real estate debt. Anyway, the point being, in the silent generation, older boomers, and greatest generation, debt levels are coming down. So there is equity in these homes. There is equity that could be released, could be accessed through a reverse mortgage, home equity line of credit. I don't know. Not sure those are out there or readily available to households with fixed incomes these days. So what's the logical alternative? Sale of the home. And we believe that there is equity there. So what are the market opportunities? We talked earlier about sort of a one-size-fits-all approach. Let's put a giant master plan, in some area, put a golf course around it, highly amenitize it. We have no complaints about the amenities, the security, the appeal, the design. All those things tend to be good. But we think you can really split this mature market into at least three obvious categories. One, the higher income households. They're not going to want to go to some of these outlying areas. They're going to want to stay in close, suburban at least, maybe even resort type locations. We'll choose golf. We'll prefer golf. We'll take beach. We'll take wine country, or resort. Could be mountain resort. I'm just talking more to California when I talk about beach, golf, and wine country. But there's going to be people, and these people might have steady incomes from businesses that pay them, and they can't leave their businesses. They want to stay, so they're going to take these, really A quality locations. And second, we've got a moderate income household. These people may want to work. It may not be full-time. It may not be in a family or an owned business, but they might have, part-time roles in businesses. They might work, at the local Home Depot. You see people in all sorts of lines of work, and people are clearly staying in the employment much longer than they have in the past. We used to think that job potency and general job availability wasn't that significant a factor. It clearly is for many of the moderate income households and in the lower income households. So what happens in a setting like that? I talk here about B and C housing locations. We all know the A locations. Everybody talks location, location, location. But we also have B locations, a little bit outlying, and C locations, those farthest out locations. Well, it's been the C locations that are supporting most of the mature market housing at this point in time. So what happens in a housing market disruption? Lots and land sometimes becomes available in B quality all-age housing that really would make excellent mature market housing locations. People can be partway out of the city, but not all the way out. Perfect example of this, I think, in the last few years is Trilogy at Glen Ivy in Southern California, just south of Corona. That was really close enough to millions and millions of jobs that they just had extraordinary results, particularly in their fully detached programs, because people could come back into work part-time, maybe full-time, intermittently. Just the appeal of being closer to work was tremendous. Now, low-income households were still going to be, essentially relegated to these C locations. It'll be all about cost. A lot of this demand is going to go out of state. The people who go out of state largely tend to do so for cost reasons. One of the other things we come across in the lower income mature market housing areas is we've recognized over time that a mature market development can be sold at a price premium to an all-age community. Maybe that's 8, 10, 12, 15%. And how you generate that premium is through community definition. It's through the golf, it's through the pool, it's through the gating, it's through the clubhouse, it's through the amenities, through the community theming and the sense of place that you can create in a large-scale community. Well, one of the things that happens is if you're in an outlying area where there might be low density and a lot of single-story homes, that all-age product can be sold at such a tremendous discount to the premium mature market product that a lot of the demand will simply leave the leave the mature market master plan community and go into all-age. So it's the lower income and these more remote locations that are most exposed to price pressure at this point in time. So what are the builders telling us? When we talk to people and we've listened to the conference calls and follow the builders of this, we find that there's very little appetite for large-scale land holdings of any type generally. It's not the builder community typically that's taking on tremendous land holdings. I mean, some people are bulking up on lots for 4 or 5 years and trying to make sure they've got some lots for the 2015 and 2016 business plan. But the large-scale land buys, there just isn't that much appetite for mature market product that's targeted at buyers that have really uncertain economic futures. Large developments, if you're building something and it's going to go on for 8 or 10 or 12 years, anytime you're in that situation, you're going to have people wanting, needing, being forced to sell, and so you're exposed to in-house competition from resales within your own development. You can certainly see that in the lower desert, Palm Springs, that particular area, these days where the resales are priced at such competitive levels that it's made it difficult for the new home product to compete effectively. Builders are repeatedly telling us that it's taking higher traffic to get the same number of sales. Sales cycles are very long. People come in again and again, look at the product, consider everything, and then they're shaken out by some new piece of news. So we do have a buyer profile that likes to look and likes to take their time. Amongst the mature buyers, though, there is still a tendency to buy upgrades and options. There's a surprising interest in affordability produced by energy efficiency. We think this is a good thing because one of the things obviously that's happening in California is the demand or requirement that a lot of the energy, 20 or 30% come from renewable resources by 2020 or 2030. That's obviously going to lead to tremendous increases in energy costs that will not only affect your home itself, but it's also going to affect your homeowners association. So in a lot of our mature market housing analysis, we will include option and upgrade revenue that is really shaky, really uncertain, and tends to occur at much lower levels in all-age housing. And last, the survey data and also on-the-ground data is telling us that some of the big golf courses, people just aren't envisioning that for their golden years, if you will, anymore. And it's much more important to have convenience retail, convenience dining. If you live anywhere near some of these larger retirement communities, you can see how busy the local restaurants are, particularly at lunch. That sort of thing is, you just lose your inclination to cook over time, and many of the convenience retails and stores are amongst the most desirable features. So really, what's the bottom line here? Let's get to the bottom line. We think the mature market has been very slow to adapt, certainly much slower than the primary market, and this is partially a function of the large-scale mega community that's difficult to reposition. Like you say, you can change the product, you can change your price, but you're essentially stuck with the location, cost of ownership, amenity-based, general cost structure. There's no getting out of that, so that makes it difficult to really react in the same way that the primary market housing has reacted. High debt levels, weak income. This is forcing people. It's a little bit more obvious here in Northern California than it is in Southern California, but we've definitely seen a wave of home sales amongst people who have essentially determined their housing values aren't coming back. They're going to sell their house at the current value, free up some equity, create some monthly income, and move on. And I haven't seen that quite as much in Southern California, but I think it's coming. Southern California has tended to follow Northern California on some of these trends in the last cycle, and I think that's probably the case here. Next cycle, mature market housing, it's not going to be the mega community and outlying location, although those still have a function. They'll still have a appeal to a certain buyer profile, but I think we're going to get many more niche opportunities. We've called them boutique sites. You can put in a smaller amenity base, keep the ownership costs down, make a much more focused, much more targeted community with focused designs, with focused amenities, with focused ownership costs, all targeting a specific buyer profile. And maybe you're in for 2 years or 3 years instead of selling out 2,000 lots over a decade. And last, the demographics are really, stand on their own. You can see the numbers. If you just look there, you can see what tremendous numbers the baby boom and the era immediately before and immediately after are going to bring to the housing market. And there's going to be a giant shift here. We're really only on the first couple innings, if you will. And we've thought this has been coming, and it has been coming in many senses and in many cases for a decade now. But we think the intensity of it really accelerates in this next housing cycle as we get out of this era of super low interest rates, the economy ultimately heals, we start to see a little bit more resale velocity, and we start to see these households disaggregate. We've all heard about people having their kids come home and stay for another 4 or 5 years. As the economy improves, these houses are going to split back up again, and that should start a process where many, many mature households sell their current home and look for new accommodations. So a quick commercial. As many of you know, in February we have a 4-part webinar series covering Northern and Central California. The first session is already done and available. You can still get that. Just because it's after the 15th doesn't mean you've missed that. And then the next 3 Wednesdays we have Central Valley, North Central Valley, and Greater Sacramento. Go to our website. You can register for these. They come with a PowerPoint. They can come with They come with a link so that you can view all of these. You can take those down and view them at your convenience. You don't have to listen to them at one set time. And they come with the sort of data we presented today, but in much greater detail for these different areas going on through the rest of February. I'm John Mulville. I certainly welcome any questions about today's presentation. Here's my contact information. We're always eager to field questions about anything we've presented and talk about general housing market economics as you see fit or so desire. Thank you for joining us today, and please do try to catch our February webinar series.